Before we start this video today, make sure you leave a like on this video. It certainly helps me out as a content creator and shows me that I am doing a great job. And if you haven't already done it, make sure you subscribe. Joseph Goodman, when researching the Mayan and figuring out their measurement of time, had no idea what he was going to unleash upon the world and how that would affect the world in the next few decades. Hello everyone, your friendly neighborhood demonic Ravenwolf, October, is back with another interesting topic, so let us get into it. If you viewed my old content, you know I have an interest in anthropology, history, and archaeology. My interest in this study perhaps can be traced back to my childhood, when I heard about interesting, bizarre stories about pseudo-history and pseudo-archaeology, such as Atlantis and conspiracies about the Mayan and Mesoamerican cultures, which was quite common and running rampant on the internet in the early 2000s, as it still is today, unfortunately. However, upon taking courses in both anthropology and archaeology, I found less mystical and more worldly and humanistic reasons for why things are the way they are. Wanting to expand my knowledge further, I decided to look back on something that people were discussing in the early 2000s. That was, of course, the significance around the date 2012, or as some researchers call it, the 2012 phenomena. The 2012 phenomena was a compilation of different absurd conspiracy theories that would occur at an event in the year 2012. The phenomena range from apocalyptic world-ending predictions, spiritual enlightenment, and encounters with extraterrestrials. Now that it has been a few years with no crazy event like this happening, I wanted to know, how did this whole thing get started? Where did all these crazy fringe theories come from? Having gone over how the 2012 phenomena progressed and changed through different people's thoughts about what they thought was going to happen, I came to a very interesting conclusion about what this whole 2012 phenomena was. Be sure to watch our TV show, go to our website, and buy our books.
A crummy commercial? Son of a bitch.
I know some people are going to say that's oversimplifying it, but in the end, that's kind of what this whole thing was about. Using 2012 was a way of marketing different fringe ideas, as well as various books and TV shows, to a wider audience in order to capture their attention. And eventually, as the internet age came around, it was a way to convince people, as well as advertise to people, to visit various websites, where different false ideas and false theories about what would happen in 2012 would be spread even further. But for those who want a more complex answer, let's take a look at the 2012 phenomena timeline. Long before our interconnected media age, the Maya were already linked with apocalyptic notions. With the discovery of the New World and the eventual discovery of the descendants of the Mayans, in 1502, they would be linked to a prophecy written in the book Libro de Columbus. The prophecy in the book was a belief that the discoveries of the lands as well as the people would lead to a chain of events which would bring about Judgment Day and the second coming of Christ. So even before the crazy notions and crazy assumptions about 2012 were a thing, the seeds of apocalypse were already in existence when it came to a Mayan connection, or what an article I read calls syncretism. Fast forward to 1897. Joseph Goodman's interpretation of measurements or cycles within the Mayan calendar. According to his version of the long count, or Baktons, 144,000 days in length in the Mayan calendar, along with other units of measurement such as ton, 360 days, unal, 20 days, and kin, 1 day, and correlate it with our modern Gregorian calendar. Although Goodman's intentions were to just get a better understanding of the Mayans' concept of time, conspiracy theorists and pseudo-historians would unfortunately use his estimates to claim that their theories were coming from an academic source. In the 1960s, Michael Cole would come up with some pretty controversial ideas about the Olmec and the Mayan. He believed that the Olmec were the originators of all advanced cultures and civilizations in the Americas. He also found these similarities between various Mesoamerican cultures which could not be corroborated. In 1966, Cole would release a book which would highlight his various hypotheses and assumptions of similar belief structures in Mesoamerica, as well as similar measurements of time. He concluded that these traditions believed that we were in fact in the fifth world, which is based on a Hopi belief, and with each cycle there would be a significant event. And then he took these different belief structures and correlated them with the Mayan long count. Of course, he did not make a date for the end of the world. That would come later. When the book was released, it was somewhat criticized by academics as well as archaeologists who were studying both the Mayan and other Mesoamerican cultures. However, throughout the 1970s and 1960s, Cole's book being influential in the creation of the 2012 phenomena. It also inspired many pseudoscientists to add on their own fringe theories to Cole's original hypothesis that was, once again, based on assumptions of similarity. Cole's book would also coalesce with Cold War fears and the rediscovery and popularization of astrology and spiritualism. It also didn't help that in the 60s and 70s, hallucinogenic drugs became more common among the counterculture movement, and inspiring some ideas, some good, but also some very bad. Before we move on, I just want to say this. I do not think all the movements in the 60s and 70s were bad. Things like free love, addressing racism/segregation, lobbying and successfully lowering the voting age, and showing that organized protests can promote change. All these positive things came out of this era. So the positive civic activism that came out of this time is not what we are discussing. However, at the same time, these new positive ideas started to be explored. People did take advantage of this era and try promoting different types of pseudoscience and pseudo-historic ideas that has led to a lot of anti-intellectualism, some of which we still experience today. With that little disclaimer out of the way, back to the video. In 1973, with television being a major media format, Alan Landsberg, a television producer, would then connect information about Cole's research, combine it with extraterrestrial conspiracy theories, and later promote it in his TV show in the 80s. That's incredible. And then later his book by the same name. Landsberg adapted these ideas from the book, ready for my terrible attempt at German? Ehrenheit der Zukunft. You probably know his work from his English adaptation from this book, known as Chariots of the Gods. With Cole's assumptions and von Daniken's look at this research, Landsberg would create this television special.
Was the secret of electricity revealed to man thousands of years ago? Is it possible that this planet Earth has been visited by travelers from outer space? Did they wander through the throbbing light years of the universe in search of other life and find it here?
To give this series an extra oomph or zest in a way of advertising to people, Landsberg would champion the idea that the aliens would return in 2011 or 2012. And what better way to do this than to throw the Mayan long count into the mix? Also in 1973, the movie Chariots of the Gods played to American audiences. Throughout the 70s, Landsberg did not just produce TV shows and market his own books about erroneous claims, but he also capitalized and marketed his material to a wider audience. He created short films so they could be played in projectors at schools and college campuses, adding further credence that this stuff was intellectually sound, even though much of this was based on assumptions and erroneous claims that were heavily criticized by archaeologists, historians, and anthropologists. At this time, another researcher and writer, Frank Waters, would be heavily influenced by the counterculture movement and the reemergence of spiritualism and astrology. He was also very interested in Mesoamerican belief structures and the ideas of cults. Like others before him, he would take these beliefs and combine them with the Mayan long count, claiming that at the end of the Mayan calendar, there would be a specific event that would be a spiritual one, or there would be a apocalyptic one where the world would end in a series of earthquakes. In 1975, Water would take these ideas and publish a book called Mexican Mystique, where he stated that a significant event would take place on December 24th, 2011. Waters was also heavily influenced by spiritualists of the past such as Helen Velasquez and Edgar Cayce, later crediting them in other books. He also believed that astrology played a role in the rise and fall of civilizations. He went on to assume that advanced civilizations in the past correlated their fall to the Mayan long count, or as he put it, 13 Baktons, 26,000 years in the Mayan calendar, or something like that. It's really just a bunch of mathematic, esoteric nonsense. Once again, despite Mexican Mystique being heavily criticized by archaeologists, historians, and anthropologists for having too many assumptions, combining cultures, and having too much influence with spiritualism, it still sold many copies and was a major commercial success. Most unfortunately, many of these copies of this book found their ways onto college campuses. So we get all these people listing 2012 or 2011 or other dates as possible dates. So how do we get to 2012 as the finite date? Well, let us not forget that 2012 was a possible date being kicked around by the fringe theorists of the 60s and 70s. However, what would bring it to the mainstream would be another pseudoscientific theory. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Terence McKenna, influenced by hallucinogenic drugs, started to come up with a new mathematical theory based on events in his own life and, of course, astrology. Eventually, he would take these different timed events in his life and develop his own fringe theory, novelty theory. This theory claimed that certain events in time and certain events in one's life were significant and could help tell us about the future. Refining this theory to apply to anybody, not just himself, he later came up with time wave zero theory and later released a book in 1993. What made this book and theory significant is that it linked 2012 as a end date. And, like many before him, he somehow linked this to the Mayan long count. Are you even surprised at this point? Since computers were well into development, Time Wave Zero would be converted into a computer program that can still be accessed and downloaded to this day. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, with the age of the internet, the 2012 phenomena took on a new life. Web articles about what could happen, top 10 lists about how the world was going to be destroyed in 2012, and vague, incorrect prophecies and vague predictions became normalized. Like television in the 60s and 70s, the internet was influential in spreading these misunderstandings and misconceptions about the Mayan calendar and 2012 being a possible day the world could end or a significant event. But adding on to this whole misconceptions, TV shows would play a role once again. TV shows such as Apocalypse and Ancient Aliens further fueled the fire, making vague predictions about 2012 in order to commercialize their show. The truly crazy thing about this whole mess is that the Mayans never said that the world was going to end in 2012. If anything, 2012 would have marked an end of a cycle and would have been a celebration, sort of their own version of a millennium. According to some researchers, the Mayan calendar was an attempt for the Mayans to keep things the same. And with the end of the calendar, perhaps a new cycle would have begun. Having gone over the timeline, you might see why I think this whole 2012 phenomena was a way to market and sell books, movies, and TV shows, and eventually convince others to visit websites. If you can tell people that you have insider knowledge about anything, it certainly captures your attention. After all, don't you want an advantage in life? You see how that works? The vagueness of prophecies can play on our desire to know, and perhaps our want to know what our fate could possibly be. However, since prophecies are in fact vague, they can sometimes apply to anybody and sometimes apply to any historical event and time. The more vague a prophecy, the longer it can last. When you add a specific date, like saying a specific event / world-ending event will happen in 2012, or very specific things that will happen, and they do not come to pass, the prophecy is sometimes discarded or completely ignored. With 2012 safely past and no terrible, spiritual, or alien encounter events have occurred, you might be wondering why this is relevant. If we can understand how one of these inaccurate prophecies got started, it can give us better insight into our culture, as well as make us more aware of the inaccuracies and inconsistencies of prophecies. Right now, there are people trying to take advantage of you about your fears and uncertainty about the future, and they are using the beliefs and vague prophecies from another culture. This time, however, they are not only using fear and uncertainty about the future to market books and TV shows and websites for their own profit, but they are also doing it to distract from real-world issues and inequality. Don't buy it. Let us learn from the 2012 phenomena as well as other doomsday prophecies that did not come to pass. As I ask at the end of all my videos, what are your thoughts on all this? Did you grow up during this 2012 phenomena? Were you scared, or did you just think nothing of it? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you soon. Hey, if you enjoy our content, maybe you would like to help us support our channel. Every little bit helps. And buy me a coffee sometime. I would also like to give a special shout out to the amazing artist who did the extraordinary character stills we used in this video. The ever-incredible Bleptarts. Definitely check out their artwork if you get the chance. Also, if you're interested in the flittering thoughts that go upon in my brain, consider following us on Blue Sky. And thank you once again for your support.